Collaboration, it has the potential to create exponentially more value for financial brands, for banks, for credit unions, and even for fintechs than just competition alone. Let's find out how we can do this together on today's episode of Banking on Digital Growth. Greetings and hello, I'm James Robert Lay, and welcome to another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. Today's episode is part of the Exponential Insight series, and I'm excited to welcome Landon Glenn to the show. Landon is the CEO and founder of Asa, and he's created a collaborative banking movement. It's a new form of open banking in which financial brands can come together at the center, putting people at the center and the control of their data, while facilitating secure connections with technologies that fit people's unique needs. Now, this collaborative approach to banking, it uses APIs to connect fintechs to banks and to credit unions through a third party that tokenizes, that normalizes, and really anonymizes all of the customer and member data before it is shared with fintechs. And what this does, it allows financial brands to be the gateway to secure, customer-facing, member-facing technology at scale. And today, Landon and I are going to discuss how financial brands can effectively, and more importantly, even realistically, approach strategy through collaborative growth. Welcome to the show, Landon. It is so good to share time with you today, buddy.
James, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves talking about this collaborative banking movement, what's good for you right now, personally or professionally? It is always your pick to get started.
Oh boy. I mean, life is good. I think we were chatting before the show about my 11-year-old, 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and 3-year-old, yes. And they're all keeping me on their toes.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you with 13, 11, 9, and 7. You think about this. What have you learned just personally being a father of 4 and being able to apply some of that perspective back into the work that you're doing professionally?
Yeah, I think, obviously you take the things you learned growing up through your life, and I think we have a tendency to want to prevent our children from going through challenges and difficulties and learning. And so I'm very much of the approach of having my kids experience adversity,
yes,
and experience challenges and have to learn and grow and solve problems. And I think that's one of the things growing up that allowed me to grow was the ability to see adversity and figure out paths around it and be able to find a better path forward. And so I want my kids to have that same experience.
I appreciate that. And really, it sounds like you're even taking a collaborative approach, working alongside with them, guiding them, coaching them to allow them to experience maybe the sting or the pain of failure and adversity, but at the same time, what can you learn? How can you grow through these experiences to come out on the other side even that much better? And that's where I want to dive into this idea of the collaborative banking movement that you've been thinking about, that you've been talking about. What do you mean by this collaborative banking movement? What does this look like?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And, prior to ASA, I was one of the owners of a fintech called Bonsai, and we did financial literacy software, and we got that in 50% of all schools in the United States. And we found a way to connect local financial institutions with the communities and work together in education with a choose your own adventure gamification where everyone could win and everybody could experience. And even prior to that, that stemmed from really a young age. When I turned 18, my older brother took me under his wing and helped me open my first credit card and build credit. I didn't understand any of it. And so the question is, how can we collaborate and bring technology into the digital lives of every consumer? Because today, I don't know about you, but my financial institution doesn't have fintechs. They don't have a bunch of apps I can use.
Yes. Well, I guess that's a follow-up. I mean, that's a great perspective into what this collaborative banking movement is, but I'm with you. I understand where you're coming from. There's a lack of fintech accessibility through financial brands that I use. Why though? Why is now the time ripe for this collaborative banking movement to really, I see the potential for it to transform banking for good, for the positive and really for the long term. But why now?
Yeah, I think that financial institutions have been trying to partner with fintech for a long time,
Hmm.
but how do they do it? Do
Yes.
you do a one-to-one integration? Do you send your customers over to another solution that may be powered by BaaS, which is another option for partnering with fintechs?
Hmm.
Well, in that option, it becomes a challenge because if I'm sending my customers to an app that has its own cards, accounts, and loans, then they're now opening accounts with a competitor. So
Yes.
it becomes really hard. How does a fintech, how does a financial institution, a bank or credit union, partner with and actually in good faith send all of their customers to apps when if they go to mint.com or Credit Karma, they're going to get advertisements for
Right.
all kinds of other banks and all kinds of other providers. And so they're basically, doomed if they try to send their partners to the existing fintech infrastructure.
Sure. And you look at the potential for challenges and even conflict here. It's almost death by a thousand cuts to a degree, but you're transforming the perspective that what we can be better together. We can do even better together. I'm curious though, when working with financial brand leaders and they hear the perspective of quote unquote collaborative banking, how do they respond? And I ask because, if we were having this conversation and it was 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, it's hyper competitive. That's, we would never collaborate. Well, here we are a decade later and the narrative is beginning to transform. So what are you hearing? What is the response from leaders today when they hear the phrase collaborative banking?
Yeah, it's excitement. They want to find ways to be forefront
Yeah.
in their consumers, their customers' digital lives. And right now, those customers, if they want a fintech for some affinity solution, they have to leave
Mm.
the bank or credit union to get that tech.
Yes.
And so how can a financial institution be the gateway to those solutions? And so really what it comes down to is I think open banking, everybody understands it's here.
Yep.
Everybody understands that fintechs are here to stay. And the consumer, 88% of Americans are using fintech today.
Right.
And we know that there's demand. The problem is, how do I get that fintech in a trusted, safe way through my existing bank or credit union? Because right now, today, there's a lot of friction
Mm.
with what the customer has to go through to get those technology solutions.
Well, let's talk about that. Thinking about opportunities here that are opened up through a collaborative banking approach. Because when I think about fintech, it's a very interesting model that you have these organizations who are sometimes solving very specific niche problems, but they're doing it in an amazing way. The challenge, though, they experience is reach, scale, and you use the word kind of unlocking. When now with collaboration, you're already being through, particularly with a financial brand, or bank or credit union, you're getting access to people who, maybe they have that problem, and now we're reducing the friction. Practically speaking, what are some of the opportunities here that you're seeing and experiencing through this collaborative banking movement?
I think that the opportunities for both sides are different, but they fit together perfectly. When you look at a fintech, what's their biggest challenge? Well, it's going to be regulatory and compliance issues around selling banking products and services, and it's going to be customer acquisition. And those are the two hardest things that they have to overcome to go to market. Basically, they have the challenge of not only selling their technology or their app or their tool, but they also have to try and convince the consumer to switch banks.
Right.
So they've got a big challenge, and for a startup that can be a daunting task. And
Sure.
so you look at how much money does it take for that to happen? How much do they have to raise in fundraising? What is the SOC 2 Type 2 cost? What does it cost to understand Reg Z and Truth in Lending and the Patriot Act and loan to
Yes.
deposit ratios and all of these things that they may not understand in fair market lending. And all these processes are things that a startup just doesn't have the expertise to even deal with. And that's
Right.
why you see the regulators stepping in such a big way
Hmm.
and saying, hey, we're going to start regulating open banking and banking as a service and all of these things. And so that was one of the hottest topics at the digital banking conference in Florida last week that
Yes.
everybody was talking about. So that's the fintech side. But then on the financial institution side, it's they need to offer the tools and the apps that meet their customers where they are
Right.
and empower them to live a better life. And
Yes.
those technology solutions, they don't have the ability to provide them. They're not tech companies. They're not good at building that user experience and building, innovative solutions and having tons of apps that are now available. And so it's really a shift in the way that we approach the problem. Is
Right.
Asa has built a new path forward, really.
Well, I want to talk about that because, and really peel the curtain back. How are you doing this? How are you bringing financial brands, banks, credit unions together with fintechs to connect, to collaborate, to grow even better together through the work that you're doing?
It's finding a way where everyone's needs can be met in a way where everybody can win. And so it's allowing the banks to focus on their core competency. So now the financial institution, the credit union, the bank is providing the regulated products and services, the loans, the accounts, everything in their local community, the boots on the ground, the ATM networks, the ability to deposit cash, the ability to go in and talk to somebody, all the things that a community institution has,
Yeah.
they provide that side of it. And then the fintechs provide really an app store of solutions. And so what it's doing is it's removing the burden of innovation and the cost and risk of innovation from the financial institution, and it's placing it on top of the crowd. So now
Mm.
independent developers can go out and build technology solutions and bring them to market at a speed and a scale that has never before been possible. So that's really how we're structuring it. But the way we actually solve those problems to go to market faster, we have to go a bit deeper to even get into that.
Well, let's do that. Let's go deeper because when you look at this, it is I say an exponential opportunity. And there's the old African proverb that says if you want to go far, or if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And what does that look like, practically speaking, to bring this idea of an app store? Okay, I'm a member, or I have an account at a community bank. What would that experience look like for me as an end user that makes my life even better financially?
Great question. And for a community institution, we have our first almost a dozen credit unions we're rolling out now. And we've now launched the ability for the consumer to own and control their data in a
Wow.
way that is more private and more secure than anything that's been done with open banking before. So the consumer is able to first connect their institution account and sync up the data into a digital wallet.
Uh-huh.
And we've created something called Asa Auth to do that. And it's the first ever in the industry ability to connect to fintech without inputting login credentials.
Wow. So you just removed a huge barrier when we're talking about friction and frustration. You've just made my life that much easier that I don't have to keep logging into, 3 or 4 different accounts or 3 or 4 different apps. It's all a unified experience. I want to come back to the internal perspective here from that, maybe those on the leadership side. When you're talking with them, what are the big roadblocks that you see or that you hear when it comes to financial brands and fintech collaborating and co-creating value together through this collaborative banking movement? What maybe slows things down just a bit?
So, in the early stages of building out our partnerships, we are running into different things that a fintech might need and different problems that need to be solved. And so, we're having to build the solutions for those problems one by one.
Mm,
As we build out those solutions for each provider, the ability to bring fintechs to market quicker is going to accelerate significantly because we solved problems for each individual fintech along the way. And now we've got pretty much all of them solved. And so
sure.
essentially, we will have the ability for the consumer to sync up their credit union membership or their bank accounts without sharing usernames and passwords, without having to look anything up, without any data mining, and then to be able to permission that data out to the apps they want to use without disclosing name, email, account number, or any other PII data. And so we've done that by offering, think of it as login with Google or
Mm,
login with Apple.
yes.
We've built login with Asa. So now every fintech that you use is going to have single sign-on through OpenID Connect, where we can authenticate the consumer and connect their accounts without them creating an account for the fintech, without having to share their information. It streamlines the entire process and makes it significantly faster.
I think this opens up so many opportunities once again. And sometimes when you have an abundance of opportunity, it can be tremendously overwhelming of what do I do next? Where do I start? In some cases, it's even just helping people to continuously see things different than how they saw things before. When we look at the transformation of banking at a macro level, what recommendations, because you've undergone a lot of transformation, particularly thinking about just your own journey here, for financial brand leaders to transform mindsets, to help them continuously see things from a different perspective as banking transforms, I would say, through this age of AI that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there, regarding, transformation and then where AI could even go. On the AI side of things, one of the original, well, he's actually the founder of Anaconda and the creator of NumPy, which is a Python-based number matrix that is basically a precursor to machine learning and AI. Their fund just invested in Asa, seeing it as the gateway to open innovation that we
Mm,
can unlock through financial institutions and bringing tech to market. Additionally, in the transformational mindset, we do have one of the 16 most influential technologists in the world, the CIO of JP Morgan Chase that oversaw the largest banking consolidation in history, is our chairman of the board and is also invested. And so we have regular meetings on how to transform mindset, how to help institutions when it comes to digital. And I think the biggest hurdle that we've been overcoming and seeing is helping them understand that they don't have to have a one size fits all app that they own and control at all times, because in the past that has been the experience. And now we're working to unlock a world where the user could use other apps, but the actual products and services underpinning and powering that app are all through their local credit union. And so it's a shift in mindset that not everybody is excited about on day one, but we have many, many practical applications that show that this is where the industry is already headed.
This makes me think of a book. It was a collaboration between Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach and Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who's an organizational psychologist. And they've been collaborating and writing these books. And one of them is titled Who, Not How. And coming back to the point of, I think the past perspective is, we have to build kind of the quote unquote super app. You're saying, no, there's another path forward here. And if you think about transformational initiatives like what we're discussing through collaboration, it's transforming the mind to not think first and foremost when you hear a new idea, well, how are we going to do that? Because it creates a bit of a mental roadblock where looking ahead towards the future, if we develop a habit of thinking who before how, who can I collaborate with, or who has the capabilities that we need to solve this problem over here. It's just a little bit of a different mental model or mental lens to think who before how, because how does become limiting. With that in mind, too, continuously thinking about the future being bigger and better and brighter than where we're at right now, I want to get your take on this. Let's leap ahead, and it's 3 years from now, and it'd be fun to actually play this conversation back 3 years from today. What are you feeling most hopeful and excited about right now when it comes to just financial services as a whole?
Every individual consumer will have the ability, the control, and the empowerment to be able to get technology to live their lives to the fullest. The products and services that have been limited to maybe certain groups or demographics and not available to others are going to be available to all. And the way we're going to do that is by unlocking innovation and 10xing the number of fintech solutions that are currently on the market. So it's going to be a whole different world. The consumer will be able to control their experience. They'll be able to get the help they need when they need it, and they'll have apps and tools to guide them through their journey.
You're bringing up a perspective I'm very passionate about, which is 10x thinking. I think historically the challenge with us as human beings is we're linear thinkers. We tend to think on this linear line, and we're a little bit better than what we were before. But you mentioned 10x and the idea of exponentiality. How do you, as a leader, navigate the complexities of exponential change? Because sometimes it can feel, and I've been doing a couple of keynotes over the past few weeks, and people feel like, man, it feels like we've just been drinking from a fire hose for the last 3.5 years. And I'm like, buckle up, Buttercup, because it's just about to get that much faster. And I think that scares some people. But I always look for the good. I always look for the positive that we can lean in on, and that's what gets us through some of these challenging times. So how do you think and navigate exponential change just as a leader yourself?
Yeah, I think that unlocking those exponential changes is completely dependent on creating something new and having a visionary approach and coming up with a new type of platform play. And when you think of the name Asa, it's after Asa Whitney. He was the visionary proponent of the transcontinental railroad that connected the East and the West Coast and unlocked the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
And one of the greatest increases in quality of human life. And that same vision carries forward today to Asa. And so when we created this, we said this is something transformational that can change the way we interact with technology. It's a new set of rails, and we have those that have come before us to learn from. Uber set out to disrupt the taxi industry. It was $5 billion in revenue at the time. About 3-4 years later, Uber did $55 billion in revenue.
Right.
Why is that? They made it easier, more convenient to get a ride. They helped more people be able to take advantage of taxi service by changing the way it operated. If we look at BlackBerry, they were the global leader in cell phones. They owned the entire market, but they had a closed platform that they owned and controlled. And when Steve Jobs launched the App Store, within the first 12 months, 75,000 apps were created and 1 billion downloads. Wow. It unlocked innovation and made Apple the most valuable country the world has ever seen.
Yes.
And when you look at these platform plays, it's learning from those before us, understanding how their platforms worked, and also the foundations to how a platform succeeds, and removing the friction, removing the barriers for all participants, and finding a true experience that can unlock that exponential growth. And so that's what we had to set out to do in banking, find a model where it truly unlocks that 10x in innovation.
Those are some fantastic examples from the railroad, and then you're coming out of kind of horse and buggy, and then you introduce the automobile, but right alongside the railroad, I think when we look back historically, what was going up along that was the transformation of communication. You had telegraph lines, which then became the telephone, and then you saw the exponential increase in telephone adoption in the 1918 flu pandemic with the laying of copper wire, and it's almost the same thing played out 100 years later, except it wasn't telephones, it was video communication. And so when you begin, and back to your point, you kind of pattern match previous experiences, or like, for example, with the iPhone, previous platforms, what worked well, how can we apply that through our own lens of the world? I want to get really practical as we start to wrap up here. What can the dear listener do today as a financial brand leader or a fintech leader to either A, start, or if they already have, B, continue to move forward and make progress when it comes to this collaborative banking movement that we've been discussing here? Something small, something practical. Is all transformative growth begins with a small, simple step, a small, simple commitment we make right now.
Yeah, the leaders that are looking for digital transformation and that are looking for a path forward, I think the biggest thing they can do is know that there's people out there fighting for them and making it easy. I think that the biggest challenges are integrating to the core processors and then normalizing and anonymizing and handling all of the data properly, and then building out the front end open API that can allow for fintechs to consume data. And so what Asa has done is built a consumer controlled wallet where Asa handles identity, consent, the issuance, the verification of credentials, data access, and allows for fintechs to integrate in less than 7 days and be live instantly to every end user. So for the first 50 financial institutions that partner with Asa, we're waiving the implementation fees and making it free. And so I think what they can do is research the apps that their members want to connect to and can't, research the tools that would make their lives better, come to us and tell us the things they want. Do you want an app for kids when they turn 18 to build credit and get their first credit card and guide them through the whole process with maybe the bumpers,
Yes.
like in the bowling alley, so they can't fall in the gutter and make some big mistakes that cost them 7 years to dig out of?
Right.
What things, we have such great technology out there. We have so much opportunity. It's just creating the rails to bring those solutions to market. And that's what ACE has done for the last 4 years, and it's finally ready.
As you're going through that perspective, I can't help but just think it comes back to humanity, and to build upon your idea and do some real-time collaboration here. If you're a financial brand, go all in on your account holders, go all in on your members, and get really good asking really good questions. Listen to what they share with you, but then also learn through some observation as well, because there's a lot that we can learn from not just what people say, but also what people do, and then compile those patterns, and then come back and continue this conversation that we've started here today, you and I, Landon. On that note, what's the best way for someone to reach out, to say hello, to connect with you, and keep the discussion going?
LinkedIn, Landon Glenn. Give me a follow or an ad and send me a message.
That's fantastic. Connect with Landon. Learn with Landon. And then together, collaboratively, we can all grow together, grow with Landon. Landon, thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Banking on Digital Growth. This has been a lot of fun today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. And until next time, and as always, be well, do good, and be the light.